when you're at the combine, it's going to be, with the draft being a different setup where you can't just get up and go to the next table and talk to anybody. Was there more or less sort of potential trade talk at the combine this year than maybe years past?
I guess it can be different for everybody. For me, there wasn't a lot of change at the combine. It's pretty much the same. What I remember the last couple of years is really it starts to pick up, the week of the draft. So I expect Monday, Tuesday to start kicking into high gear as far as the trades, swaps, whatever, for the draft.
Because of what you have, do you think your phone maybe is going to ring a little bit more this year than previous?
I would expect so, but I don't know. I can't control with the other guys or if they like the slots that we have. We have a lot of them. So, but having so many picks, I would expect it. I'm also going to make a lot of calls too to try to gauge what the interest. But so far it's been pretty quiet on that front. It feels like everybody's trying to move up at the moment. And we've said from the beginning we'd like to try to move up if it was possible. But right now there's just not a lot of options there. Teams are all looking to move up. So we'll have to be patient, and maybe there's an opportunity that comes where we can create value going the other way also.
To follow up on that a little bit, you guys have 7 picks obviously in the first 48 of this draft. It's a situation that some teams either like or sometimes don't like because it's hard to pick 7 guys that early in a draft. Do you guys see it more as like that as an opportunity for you guys, or more of the opportunity that you guys have ammo if you need to go up, or vice versa, like last year, trading away a pick to push those picks down the line a little bit?
Well, I'll let Brent answer the part about having so many picks available, but for me, there's definitely a lot. It's a lot of ammo to try to do different things, and not necessarily, move up or down, but it could be acquiring for the future. So there's just a lot of possibilities. I don't know. I think we like especially the picks starting at the 31 to 48. Like 5 times.
Yeah, no, you got to plan it a little differently. Traditionally, if you just have 1 pick in the second round, you're getting, you're really focused in on just a small group of players that you think are going to be there. This year, our groups, because of what we've had, we've spent a lot of time on a lot of different ranges, and so there's certain layers like we have every year. We've gone a little deeper this year and spent a lot more time in certain areas, but. And we'll gauge it. If players still available that we have in a higher layer, we'll move up. If not, we think we can get value, move back a couple spots, still get the same caliber player. We'll try to do that. So I think there's going to be some opportunities for movement. Having more picks is always beneficial. It just gives you a lot of freedom to do a lot of different things, whether it's trading outright for a player, trading up if a player's still on the board that you're really excited about, or again, trading back and trading out. So anyway, it's a lot more fun being on this side of it at this time of year when you have these picks and this ability to do some things.
Do you see a situation where you guys may select all 7?
Absolutely. And especially this year, after spending a lot of time with their guys, there's a lot of players that our guys like in that window after 22 to 48. So there's actually, a really good chance that we keep the picks and we really build around those guys.
Danny, Brent just said about layers, tiers, and that's the way you guys and a lot of teams look at the draft. With the lottery, with you guys, I guess you could say falling to 6.
Mm-hmm.
Is that concerning to you at all in terms of what it might say about like the tiers? Like, are you guys falling out of a tier? Is that a worry?
Not anymore. Not after. Spending the time that we've done the last few weeks, and we're still every day watching more video on those guys. We feel more and more comfortable and confident that we're inside. There's obviously the number 1 guy that everybody sees, but after that, on the night that it happened, I was bummed, falling back 2 slots, but after the last couple weeks, I feel really good about it.
Brent,
Go ahead, Jordan.
I was going to ask Brent, is there a position where in the first round you think it's a strength of this draft? I know a lot of people are saying there's a lot of centers up top, but what do you guys see?
Yeah, obviously it's pretty well talked about. Early in the draft, top 10, there's a number of centermen, which isn't always the case. There's a few defensemen. couple high-end wingers. There's obviously, different options there. So, we obviously are well aware of our own needs. At the same time, there's some, players, especially at number 6, we're going to go with the best player on our board.
Brent, when you look at 22 to 48, like what is the depth like in that range? We always hear about the top of the draft, but once you start to get into the second round, what are we looking at?
Yeah, I think there's a number of different types of players. There's some, whether it's smaller skilled winger, there's still some centermen on the board that may be middle lineup type of guys, but still valuable players. And there's some big defensemen that are going to need maybe a little bit of time, but guys are excited about and have a lot of potential. There's a lot of different types of players there that our guys think, have a chance to be real good players down the road. Are they going to play next year? Realistically, no. But they're going to be valuable assets to add to an organization.
Is there a goalie that when you kind of do your internal discussions that you would put a first round grade on?
Potentially one this year, but there's a number of goalies that I think I've mentioned it before to a number of you guys. There's a number of goalies, even as the draft goes along, that our guys are high on and think there's a lot of potential there that maybe use that pick for a positional player rather than a goaltender in that spot. Just what we have, but we'll manage that as the draft goes along. You've seen the draft before. As soon as one goalie goes, usually it's a bang, bang, bang. They start to go. So we have a number of picks in that range. We'll see.
Danny, obviously you picked a center with Jet last year. How do you just view the overall center depth in the organization right now, and how important is it for you to bolster the depth of that position specifically?
Well, we know it's an area of need moving forward, but re-signing Cates also helps, solidifies that for the next 4 years for sure. Jet's on his way, and I mean we signed Dorwart, we signed Gaucher. Like those guys are, they probably still need a little bit more time, but they're on their way. A guy like Jack Berglund, we knew when we drafted him that was a long-term project, but a 6'4" centerman, he's still really in play for us down the road. Ronan had a great year. He was really good at the World Juniors. These guys are all moving in the right direction. Cole Knubel's another one. They're moving in the right direction, but you don't know how far they will take their game. But they're still in play. We still hope that they're able to take the next step and help us down the road. At the same time, having so many picks this year, it's an area that we would like to solidify a lot more. Calling around the league, finding centers, it's almost impossible. And forget, you're not going to find a first line or second line center. A lot of teams will be willing to, entertain a fourth line center, moving a fourth line guy, but they'll want a second line winger in return. So they're hard to find. So if we have the chance, we want to start, and we started that a couple of years ago. We're going to start drafting them and grooming them, and hopefully down the road, it might take 3, 4, 5 years, but they'll turn into good players that we can either use here or for an asset to acquire something that we need. It's just centers have a lot of value these days.
Danny, especially at 6, how much does, assuming you guys take a forward, I guess you could take a defenseman depending on how it plays out, but how much does size play into it? Because you guys have Mishkov's under 6 foot, Luchenko's under 6 foot. You guys locked out Travis Konechny for a long time. He's under 6 foot. These are top of the lineup guys, and the guy you take at 6 is expected to be a top of the lineup guy. That's why you're taking him at 6. Is that a major contributing factor to your decision, or are you guys not really taking that too much into account?
Well, it's something to consider, just like the skating, the hockey sense, the competitive edge. Like it's part of it. It probably doesn't play into it as much as how competitive he is and the hockey sense. I think those things are probably more important, even the skating. We're aware of it, but at the same time, we want to be careful. There's other areas we can protect those guys with, the Hathaways of this world that can come in and make sure, the Deloria, the Sealer, like those guys. So I'm not, we're aware, but at the end of the day, it shouldn't sway us too much.
Danny, you mentioned about shifting into a mindset of adding and not subtracting from your roster. So are you going into this draft thinking now's the time to maybe be a little more aggressive to add to your roster right now, or is it going to be kind of see how things play out?
You know, the one thing I want to make sure and let our fans know is like the plan hasn't changed. We're not going to pay crazy assets, you know, just to do something crazy. It has to make sense. You know, if it doesn't, it doesn't. We'll select our players, and it might be all the picks. There might be nothing that changes. But at the same time, if we have a chance to improve the team and it makes sense for the long term, we're going to look into it. So it's on the table, but yeah, aggressive is probably the wrong word.
Danny, kind of going off what you said earlier, you have a lot of young guys that you're hoping, you know, step onto the ice this year. Does that change your approach with your draft picks, or is it more of best available player versus team need?
At the top of the draft will definitely be the best player available for us, and then as you go down the draft, you know, if we take, I don't know, for example, 3 centers and with their first 3 picks, after that we're probably going to ease up a little bit and try to get and start looking at positional needs, or different position at that point. But at the top, especially at number 6, we're looking at the best player available.
So you said originally, I just wanted just to clarify, I mean, obviously you were bummed when you dropped a couple spots in the lottery, but since then you're more confident that it's not going to make as much of a difference than if you were at 3 or than 6? Is
That's the feeling. It almost feels like someone else is going to make the decision for us. We feel that there's from 2 or 3 to 8. Those guys are really, really close. So, you know, we'll have a tough decision to make at 6. We know that. But instead of having to choose between 5 or 6 guys, it might be 2 or 3 guys.
When you guys look outside of the draft, obviously, you mentioned that the trade chatter hasn't really been there, but it might pick up next week as it gets closer to draft. Do you guys feel like there may be an opportunity to use what you guys have this year to expand your roster? Like Jordan said, adding to the roster rather than, you know, just using.
Yeah, it's possible. It's possible. It's something that we're going to consider, and we've had a few talks with different teams. But again, you know, we realize in the area of need is center, and like I said, teams don't really want to move centers unless it's a 4th line guy.
Along the lines of the size question, does the hiring of Tocchet affect the way you look down the road? I mean, I don't know exactly how that fits in, but Tocchet may have a style that he coaches, or bigger players, smaller players, whatever.
Not really. I don't think it changes much from what Torts was looking for anyway. And you know, he fits in. You know, you hire a coach, he fits into the vision that we had. Talks is really much on board with what we're trying to do. That was one of the things that, you know, got him excited about this team, is the direction it's going in. So I think we're all on board there. We have the same vision when it comes to that.
Brent, you know, usually when you go into this, there's X number of guys you're looking at for that number, and with that number 6 spot, is there a list of, like, we all know kind of who's going to go number 1, and Danny kind of said after that it's wide open, but how many guys are you realistically targeting with that number 6 pick that, you know, when you kind of tier those out? How many guys are in that?
Over the year or right now?
Well, for right now, like, as you look at number 6 and what could be available there.
We have, I don't know, it's probably 10 or 11, 12 guys that we've zeroed in, and we have, you know, that's my opinion on my draft. I've probably narrowed that smaller, but as a group, you know, we got still meetings to go. There's gonna be guys arguing, banging heads, and all next week still the position. But you know, we've had our meetings for the most part already, but there's still guys that are gonna fight for their guys, and it's legitimate. You know, we've put our list together, and there's still some unsettled arguments, but at some point you have to just put names up and go. So we've done a lot of research since then. We've, you know, had the combine, we've done a lot of interviews in person, and then obviously we'll do more by Zoom here this week, next week. And then once we get out the information, we'll make those decisions and put the final list together.
Brent, both you and Danny, after last year's draft, noted that you guys thought that this draft, you know, was top heavy, was strong, is one of the reasons why you guys traded back to get the Edmonton pick for this year.
Mm-hmm.
Has that evaluation changed over the course of the year, or is it pretty much held?
No, it's pretty much held. Like, I think, you know, when people talk about the draft at the top end, you know, there's, you know, you don't have Bedard, you have Schaefer and a couple of guys that are highly touted. But this year's actually turned out to be similar to last year as far as the depth. And then the second round, I think there's some depth, and then there's a fall off a little bit later. So, yeah, I think there's some guys that certainly didn't pan out this year within the draft that we had high expectations, but there's others that have popped up, and it's just the way it is, so.
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously the first year of the new draft style. Everybody's decentralized. Is it gonna be a tad harder, you feel like, this year with this draft? Like, you can't just walk to somebody's table and talk to them. It's gonna be a little bit harder communication. Do you feel like it's gonna be a little bit of an issue for some of the GMs to talk to everybody?
I think there's going to be positives and negatives from it. I like personally, I like being on the floor and being able to, you know, grab the phone on the table or walk over to get something done face to face. I kind of like that. That's just me. But there's also the privacy part where having so many picks, having the luxury to be just in a confined by ourselves and not worry about, you know, computers or lists being wide open, available to everybody. Because we have so many picks, I think that's going to be an advantage this year for us, makes it a little easier. But I'm going to miss, you know, being on the floor with everybody and the energy that it creates having everybody down there.
I think it just forces you also to do, you know, you got to have a lot of potential trades up and down, probably the night before or that morning in place if certain things fall a certain way. So you're going to have to do a lot more of that. You know, we've always done that anyway, but usually go over the floor. All right, you're still going to interested to do it at the start of the second round. There's a lot of conversations, but now you have to do it by phone, and that's the difference.
You have all these picks, obviously. You don't have as many next year. You've talked about trying to, you know, wanting to improve the team, the NHL team for next year. Is there not some urgency to take advantage of this unique situation where you have so many picks in order to help the NHL team, or is it just you're just going to?
It's all about it's all about value.
Yeah.
You know, and at the end of the day, if you feel that you know, acquiring a player versus who's there staring at you, because right now the picks they're just numbers to you when you look at them. You know, they're just numbers. Like we have, you know, 36, 40, 45, 40, they're numbers. But eventually there's a name to it. And the one thing I've realized when you talk to teams is that those names become very powerful, and you did start developing them. It's really tough to acquire, and the value that teams put on names, you know, becomes stronger and stronger. So, you know, you got to be careful. Yes, it might be enticing to get a player that might help you for a year or two, but if you think down the road, that player who's just a number right now might become way more valuable in 3, 4, 5 years, and that's what we were constantly trying to evaluate.
Yeah, I also think too, there's you know what we're trying to do here.
Right.
There's an age grouping. I think we're not going to be throwing away picks for rental older players, and you know, you can go maybe sign in July 1, but if there's a younger player that fits in our age group that helps us now, then that's worth a pick or certain picks, then yes, certainly. But are we just going to be throwing picks at, you know, older players for a short-term
Yeah, no, I
game?
didn't
That's
think that.
not
Yeah,
right,
I mean,
so.
obviously you're not in a position where you've said that, you're not in a position to go out. and
But,
rent
you know, there's
for
window players, and, you know, we're talking a lot of teams.
But
that are-
keep in mind, like the value of those young guys elsewhere that could come and help us, you know, is a lot higher for the other teams too,
Danny, I know.
that they've groomed and developed for the last few years.
Sorry,
Two more.
I know when you selected Matvei Mishkov, you said that you guys were willing to take swings a little bit more on talent. Do you still feel the same way at 6 that, you know, it might not be the guy that looks like the safe pick, maybe a guy that's maybe a little more outside the box, but talented?
Oh, I think we've shown that we're not afraid to do that, but we're going to do what we feel is the best player. It doesn't mean we're just going to swing for the fun of it and keep you guys on your toes. You know, we're going to go with who we think the best player is. And look, our guys have done a lot of work. I rely on our guys that go out in the field and have done hundreds of reports and seen those guys 100 times live. You know, and no offense to all the experts out there that, you know, watch these players on tape once or twice and they make their own rankings, and it's great, and it works for them. But I'm gonna trust our guys that I've worked with for a lot of years, you know, that they're experts at it, and that's what they do. And they give us, you know, over 100 reports on those guys. That's just me. I'd rather trust the guys that I know and that I know put in the work.
Yeah, and swings, you know, that terms gets thrown around a lot. Like Michkov was a swing in terms of when you can get him over, but as far as talent, that wasn't a risky pick. So, but I know that the word gets thrown around a lot, taking swings at a certain guy. You know, obviously with the number of picks we have, if there's, you know, guys may be lacking something, whether it's skating ability or maybe a little size or whatever, those are the things you can try to do as the draft goes along. At 6, I don't know if we'd be taking a swing. There's a number of the players there that are in that range aren't really swings for me. There's different strengths and weaknesses, different types of players maybe, but they're all going to be good players down the road.
Last one?
I'm curious, you said, you know, kind of stick with that big swing some. There are a couple of guys who missed significant times this year with injury. You know, Schaefer, obviously, Frondell, McQueen. How do you sort of judge, you know, what those guys can do, you know, 3, 4, 5 years down the line when you just don't have the tape on them to look this year? And you know, at 6, those are guys, you know, maybe not Schaefer, but that could be in that group of people you're looking at. How do you sort of grade those guys, engage those guys, versus a kid who played 68 games, 70 games, whatever?
Yeah, it's certainly a challenge. Obviously, certain kid, you know, Schaefer, you don't need to see a whole lot. There's other players, Mikko, or, you know, we only played a couple of games. We were lucky enough to see him last year on tape. The good thing is because of the number of injured players this year, Central Scouting, the league did a great job, you know, with the agents, getting the information for the teams. We were able to send medical personnel to the combine. They interviewed, you know, the players that we asked for. They were able to get their hands on to see where they are. You know, had a look at their MRIs through, you know, their agents getting the information. So we feel a lot more comfortable now with where these players are at. You know, there's, you know, 1 or 2 that are probably still, there's, you know, a chance of re-injury or whatever, or there's maybe some red flags, but in most cases, these kids are young, healthy guys. You're gonna heal and get better. So it takes a lot of the fear or the worries away from us. So
All right, thanks, everyone.
thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it.